Hello and welcome to N90X. Today I want to talk to you about my Hackintosh. Back in 2010, I built my first Hackintosh and I discovered TonyMacX86.com. There were other resources out there, but this is the one that really made it easy to build your own Hackintosh. Now I'm a huge Apple fan. I've got probably 10 Macintosh computers, everything from the 2008 Xserve, which in another video, I'll put a link below, video series, I converted that into a Mac Pro, a very low cost way to do it if you wanted to use real Apple hardware. Following the 10.6 installation guide, I built my first Hackintosh on a Gigabyte P55A-UD3 motherboard and 16 gigs of RAM, two 1 terabyte drives, and an ATI Radeon, I want to say 68,000. And it's a very powerful machine, and it's been working rock solid ever since dual booting. On the first disk I have two 1 terabyte drives in the original installation. The first disk I dual boot OS X and Windows 7. So on the second drive, it's another 1 terabyte drive. Half is used as a scratch disk, the other half is being used as a time capsule so that I could back up the original OS X installation. So updating you today, yesterday what I did was, and I got this done in about a day, I got a new 2 terabyte hard drive. Now my plan was to put the new installation on this drive. Now what I did that's a little bit different than you'll find in the installation guides, and maybe it's a tip that you can use, is I split the drive into two partitions. One partition I actually carbon copied over my existing El Capitan image, okay, and that was on one partition. On the second partition, after I installed it into the drive, I carbon copied my original Snow Leopard 10.6 onto the second partition, okay, and I tested that using the original bootloader, and it's working super fast, at least the 10.6 partition. The new El Capitan, of course, doesn't have a bootloader for it, and you can't access it. But hang on. Then, and if you go to Tony Mac X86 and if you go to Tony Mac X86 and put into the search bar over here P55A-UD3 or whatever your motherboard is, you can read up on different people's success with upgrading various things. This second link here, successful Gigabyte P55A-UD3 version 2 Yosemite guide. This particular guy, who is a staff member, wrote here, is this it? No, this is the, it wrote here how he successfully upgraded to Yosemite. Now I'm going to El Capitan, which is an even newer version, and I roughly followed his procedure along with the Unibeast install OS X El Capitan on any supported Intel-based PC. This, of course, you can get from the guides here, 10.11. So if you follow the 10.11 guide, which is here, of course you need to have a Apple account, somehow get your hands on a real copy of El Capitan, download that. The second step, as you follow here, is you need to download Unibeast from the TonyMacX86.com website, and of course with your free account you're able to access Unibeast. What Unibeast will do is make your El Capitan bootable off a memory stick, a USB memory stick. They recommend 16 gigs or better. This is a 16 gig Toshiba memory stick. I think I paid $6 for it. It was 25 zloty, so about $6, $7, and at a local retailer. That's the second step, okay? Now, in step 3, recommended BIOS settings, I thought that since I already had a working Hackintosh, I didn't really have to mess with this. I did discover that, at least on this motherboard, I had to disable USB 3 in the BIOS. So keep that in mind if you get the init 5 freeze up screen when you boot off the USB. Make sure you disable USB 3 in the BIOS. Okay. Now the fourth step, again according to this plan, is to install El Capitan. So you're going to boot off your system and select the USB hard drive, and I believe it's F12 on this motherboard, but you're maybe delete, you're maybe whatever, F2, whatever. You may have a different button to press when you boot up, but at least on this Gigabit, it's I believe it's F12 is to select a drive. So boot off of this, then you will install El Capitan. Now, since I already imaged my partition with El Capitan, I still selected the same El Capitan partition. It basically reinstalled El Capitan over top of it, but it left all of my applications in place. It didn't remove anything. Now, I don't know if I just got lucky, but that's what I did. You don't have to do that. I didn't do a clean install. I wanted to have all my applications there, and since I carbon copied the drive, the partition, from a working one, all my applications were there. Okay, now getting to step 5, post installation with MultiBeast. Well, you boot off of the memory stick, you install El Capitan. It's gonna, after it finishes installing, it's gonna reboot. Again, you select the USB just to boot up. Now you select the El Capitan partition to boot from, and then you run MultiBeast. Again, MultiBeast is an app that you're going to download from TonyMacX86.com. What that'll do is install all the post-installation fixes and patches so that your system will actually boot up and not crash. Step 5, post-installation is when it installs Clover. Clover is a bootloader. It's different than what I had before, which I think was Chameleon, that does the boot stuff, boot up, you know, the initial boot stuff. So I'm going to stay with me on this, okay? Remember, I got talking about 3 different hard drives here, and I recommend if you already have an existing system that's working and you want to upgrade to a newer version of the OS, just get a new drive. They're cheap enough that it makes sense to do that. So in the post installation, if you're unsure, look for someone who has the same motherboard and has a successful path for you. This particular guy named Thule37 has the same motherboard, different graphics card, and he shows the screenshots for when he upgraded to Yosemite. Now again, these screenshots are a little bit different than what you'll find for El Capitan, because the MultiBeast for El Capitan has some different options. But as you see here, I basically followed everything that's in here that made sense. Whatever made sense. Some of these things did not exist or do not exist on the new MultiBeast. Some of these features, or I didn't follow. Like for instance here, the current configuration is showing you what it is at the end. But some of the, like this, he said that he modified this plist, this org.chameleon.boot plist. I didn't touch that. I didn't mess with that. I think he had to do that because of his particular graphics card. Typically, or up till now, Mac Pro 3.1 has been the recommended model that you pick. I didn't find this out until later when I'm thinking now of upgrading to Sierra. 3.1 is no longer supported by Sierra, by Apple, for the latest OS. So you have to, now they're recommending iMac 14.1, 14.1 or 14.2. You're going to have to look into that if you're going to go to Sierra. Or if you're planning to go to Sierra, look into that. Make sure you can select it now. Just have it there. Okay? That's just something to think about. Heads up. Yeah, here's this. Now, the Realtek audio, for some reason, if I remember correctly, I used a Voodoo driver on my last Hackintosh, and it seemed to be working. I used the current one. It didn't have current with the version number. It just said ALC C888 on the new MultiBeast. You're going to have to maybe play with this, but to get around that, and this is what I recommend actually if you're building a Hackintosh, don't want to really mess with rebooting all the time and playing with it, is get yourself one of these. I mentioned this in the 2008 Xserve to Mac Pro videos, utilizing this device. It's like $8, and it works with OS X right out of the box. Just plug it in. It detects it as a sound device, and you can select it for microphone and for output, in and output. And it has really nice features, you know, mute for the mic, mute for the speakers, and also volume control. Of course, with volume control, if you do not have an Apple keyboard, there is a open source program called Spark, which will allow you to customize keystrokes to add the volume up, volume down. So that's just some tips for you guys who are building it. And if you have a similar motherboard as mine, I believe mine is considered a legacy motherboard because it's a P55, as far as I know. Anyways, I went with all the legacy stuff rather than the newer stuff, and it's working fine. So let me see if did I cover all these. I think I might have covered all these. Anyhow, I'll put the link to this guy's page in the description box to use this as a guide. Obviously, your system is different, so you're going to have to use something different. Now, what happened when I booted up? When I booted up, just because of how my system is booting, the priority of the drives, the original Hackintosh drive with Chameleon boots up. Okay. Now I do see all the other new partitions, the replicated Snow Leopard and also the new El Capitan, but they will not boot using the old bootloader. So what I have to do is when I boot up, press F12 again, select hard disks to boot from, and then it allows me to select my new 2 terabyte drive to boot from. Now when I do that, it boots up Clover, and I can still see all the partitions, but if I try to boot the old Snow Leopard, it's not going to work. Or even if I try to boot the new clone Snow Leopard, it's not going to work because it's dependent upon a different bootloader. However, it does allow me to boot El Capitan, no problem. And it is booting really fast. It is really, this is an i7, 4 cores, 2.93 gigahertz, 16 gigs of RAM. This puppy is badass. I think all in, because I did buy an Apple compatible high definition camera, generic keyboard, generic mouse, and a 1080p monitor. So not including the monitor, I think I got about $1,300 into this system. That's $2010. So you could probably build this same system for $900, $800 now. You'd probably be better off getting a new motherboard and even a newer graphics card. Although this graphics card is pretty awesome. What else? That's pretty much it. I hope that's helpful for you to kind of understand how to build this. I know there's a lot of videos out there talking about how to do it. I don't find them giving you a really good information, especially if you're new at this, to really help walk you through. But you got to do a lot of reading. This TonyMacX86.com website is probably the best resource, spelling it out for you step by step. And this little bit of information that I'm giving you, a little bit of extra information, hopefully adds a little bit of color and hopefully adds a little bit of color to your task of building or upgrading your existing Hackintosh. Until next time, thank you for watching, and I hope to see you on the next video. Take care.